Hello, hello. Says I'm here now. Maybe I am. Sometimes I just don't know. But says I'm here anyway. So hello. How are you? Um, and for anyone who's watching this on replay, you can tell me how you are in the comments down there. But we've been studying First Samuel, and we've learned about how that Hannah prayed for Samuel and she had him and she kept him until he was weaned and then took him back to Eli. And let's see, what else is there that that we've gone over? We've gone over how that Eli's sons were wicked in their ways and they had mistreated um, the sacrifices. Oh, what was that? The sacrifices, and how that God had said that Eli and his two sons would die on the same day. And I believe it was on the same day. I could be wrong. We know that whenever First Samuel started, that there had been no prophets for 400 years. And that no one had spoken to God the way like Moses and Joshua did. It had been, I believe it was 400, it was 3 centuries, not 400 years. Was it 400 years? Okay, I'm confused today. Anyway, it'd been a long time. A long time. In my notes, it says 3 centuries, but I think it was 400 years. But I could be mixing that up with something else. I do that sometimes. That's why I have to look back. We know that the ark was stolen because it had been used in the wrong ways. It was used more like an idol than what God had chosen for it to be used for. It was placed in the wrong areas, and the Philistines had gotten it. The Philistines ended up having a very hard time because of it. One of their gods, which we know is not a real god, he bowed to it, and he or Dagon was the god. They put the ark in where Dagon, the symbol, the figure was at, and the first time it bowed and they picked it back up. Then whenever they came back in, it had lost its head and its arms and everything. All it was just like a torso, and everything else was broken off. Um, the Philistines ended up deciding, okay, we can't have this here. This is not good. It is causing us lots of trouble. We're having plagues. We're having um, tumors and all these things happening. So they decided to put it on a cart in the improper way and to send gifts with it that were offerings, so that maybe they would appease God by doing this. And they did it wrong. And then we find out in chapter 6 that some of the people looked into the ark, and whenever they did that, they were put to death. Which, you're not supposed to look into the ark. There were certain people that could do that, certain people that could do certain things, and only certain times of the year and things like that. So we find that the people just kept making mistakes. And if we pay attention, we know that very similar things are happening now. People are making a lot of mistakes. They're going against God's ways. They're going for idols. And even Christians are making those mistakes because there's so much of the world and Christianity mixed together that if you're not studying your Bible, you don't know which is which, because there are some things that sound good. They sound like they would be a good thing, and it might be okay, but it ends up being something that is against what God has commanded us. Um, so there's a lot of things that people do that are harmful to them. And today we're going to be going into chapters 7 and 8. And we're going to talk about how that the people are still messing up. They're still messing around with idols, false gods. They're still mistreating things and doing things in a way that God commanded us not to. So I'm going to start off with chapter 7 and read there. And this is when Samuel agreed. And when we discovered this about ourselves, there are two things to do: apologize to God and just start doing the right things. Exactly, Donna. Hey, Carol. But we're going to get started in chapter 7, verse 1, of course. And where that we're at now, this is something else that in the Bible now. Jesus, you saw him growing up, in the Bible. You read about him as a baby and all this stuff. There's very few people that you hear about their birth and their childhood and their adult life. Now, I'm not saying there aren't any more than Samuel, but there are a few. Moses is one. We hear about him in his childhood, but there's not a lot of them. But now we have gotten to the point, we don't know about who Samuel married. We don't know when he got married. We don't know those things from reading scripture, but we know that he had children, and now Samuel is an old man, or he's older. So we're getting to that point, and we're going to find there's more prodigals. But then again, are you a prodigal if you don't come back to God? I need to find that. Let me write myself a note. Are you a prodigal just if you walk away from God, or are you a prodigal if you don't come back? Y'all can probably tell me faster than, but that's something I want to know. I need to learn shorthand. That's what I need to do. Okay. Or come up with my own shorthand. I'd probably confuse myself with it. But we're going to learn about Samuel and his children. 2 of his children, anyway. All right. Verse 1. Then the men of Kiriath-jearim came and took the ark of the Lord and brought it into the house of Abinadab on the hill, and consecrated Eleazar his son to keep the ark of the Lord. So that's where that the ark is. It was in Beth Shemesh, and now it's at Kiriath-jearim. I may be saying these words wrong. It's Kiriath-jearim. I may be saying them wrong. Please excuse that part. I'm not perfect with with all these words. I try. So it was that the ark remained in Kiriath-jearim a long time. It was there 20 years, and all the house of Israel lamented after the Lord. So lamenting is whenever you're, well, I've always thought of lament as like whenever you're sad, whenever you're, what does it mean? I've got to figure that out now. I did not do this very well. I thought, well, actually, these thoughts didn't come in my mind. A passionate expression of grief or sorrow. That's what I thought. You're mourning. So they were mourning before the Lord. Let's see, where was it at? Then Samuel spoke to all the house of Israel, saying, if you return to the Lord with all your hearts, then put away the foreign gods and the Ashtoreths from among you, and prepare your hearts for the Lord, and serve him only, and he will deliver you from the hand of the Philistines. Now, the Ashtoreths were fertility gods, and we're going to find out there were, there's two. I think there's two. I know that there's the Ashtoreth, but I think there's another. I know there was Baal they were worshiping too. Um, so the children of Israel put away the Baal. Oh, there it is. I didn't even have to think. It was right there in the next verse. The Baals and Ashtoreths, and served the Lord only. So this is 20 years that we know, because it's what it says, that they were still not serving God. They were still doing their own thing. They're like had one foot in one place and one foot in the other, and they kind of like on the fence. They didn't know which way they were going, and they were miserable, which is what happens whenever you are either, I mean, people who are not on God's side at all, a lot of them think they're happy, but if they really looked at themselves, they're not. They're miserable. Well, these people were in the middle there. They were kind of like, I want to be with God. Oh no, I want to be with these false gods. And they were miserable. They were lamenting. So Samuel told them, get rid of these things and go for God only. Serve him. So they did that. And Samuel said, gather all Israel to Mizpah, and I will pray to the Lord for you. So they gathered together at Mizpah, drew water, and poured it out before the Lord. And they fasted that day and said there, we have sinned against the Lord. And Samuel judged the children of Israel at Mizpah. Now when the Philistines heard that the children of Israel had gathered together at Mizpah, the lords of the Philistines went up against Israel. And when the children of Israel heard of it, they were afraid of the Philistines. The Philistines are just the big old enemies. They keep messing with the children of Israel. So the children of Israel said to Samuel, do not cease to cry out to the Lord our God for us, that he may save us from the hand of the Philistines. So they're saying, keep talking to God. We want God to save us. They were depending on God now. That's the way I see it. If I'm wrong, y'all can let me know what y'all think. But it's now they're asking the man of God to go to God and to plead for them, to have help against the Philistines. So, and Samuel took a suckling lamb and offered it as a whole burnt offering to the Lord. Then Samuel cried out to the Lord for Israel, and the Lord answered him. Now, as Samuel was offering up the burnt offering, the Philistines drew near to battle against Israel. But the Lord thundered with a loud thunder upon the Philistines that day, and so confused them that they were overcome before Israel. So God answered Samuel's prayers. He came and he helped the Israelites. He with a loud thunder. And the men of Israel went out of Mizpah and pursued the Philistines and drove them back as far as Beth-kar. So the Israelites took over them, the people of Israel. Then Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Shen and called its name Ebenezer, saying, thus far the Lord has helped us. So there was a mark there. There was a marker. You know, whenever we go places, I am a marker, like a map marker. You don't tell me roads and numbers, like names of roads and numbers and stuff like that. I don't do well with that. You tell me about landmarks. You tell me, well, it's right past that Dollar General over there, which there's 4,000 of them on every street. So but you say, you know, it's right past this place. This water tower is here. Then you're going to have to turn on the left side. You know, that kind of thing. I'm a landmark person. And so he had set up a landmark. He had set up a symbol of where that God had pushed them, helped them to. So the Philistines were subdued, and they did not come any more into the territory of Israel. And the hand of the Lord was against the Philistines all the days of Samuel. Then the cities which the Philistines had taken from Israel were restored to Israel, from Ekron to Gath, and Israel recovered its territory from the hands of the Philistines. Also, there was peace between Israel and the Amorites. So what this is telling me is, whenever you go to God and you completely go to him, everything you lost is going to be restored. in some way. It's going to be restored. It may not be exactly. I mean, I'm pretty sure there were still some marks of the Philistines on these lands. There were still a little remnant of them somehow there that that had to be overcome, but the people had their land back. I have what I have been told is a form of dyslexia insofar as directions are concerned. I know what you mean. I never thought about that being dyslexia. Light bulb moment. Ebenezer means stone of help. I didn't even look that up. I should have looked it up. I didn't think about it. I wasn't thinking about the names this time. I was thinking about what God was doing for them. There's a bug. Ooh, I killed it. No, I didn't. I just knocked it out a little bit and then it flew away. Y'all, we've been outside today. Jeff did some weed eating and the back door is right there. So the critters have come in. They have come in and they get my desk area first, it seems. Okay, so where was I at? And Samuel judged Israel all the days of his life. He went from year to year on circuit to Bethel, Gilgal, and Mizpah, and judged Israel in all those places. But he always returned to Ramah, for his home was there. There he judged Israel, and there he built an altar to the Lord. So the people got their land back. They got their freedom back. And now it doesn't say that they weren't miserable, but from my own experience, whenever I left God and I went back to God, whenever I rededicated my life, I was not miserable anymore. Now, I'm not going to lie and say that I'm never upset. I'm never sad. That would be the biggest lie in history, because y'all know that for over a month now, I have been sad. I have been miserable at times. I have had grief. I've had all these things going on. And y'all know, if you watched my videos, you know that I've been going through a lot with our daughter. Which I'm hoping that it's getting better. It seems to be getting better. And I feel a little bit more like me. I feel like some of that is coming back. Now, this is not because I walked away from God. This is not happening because of me doing anything I shouldn't have been doing. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, you're still going to have heartache as a Christian. It's just going to happen. No matter what, you're going to have heartache at times. We're all going to have to go through things. And we're going to have to go through hard times, because that is what sin does. And sin came in when Adam and Eve sinned. When they disobeyed God, we were all cursed. Y'all know that if you've studied Genesis at all. You know that we were all cursed. And every bad thing that happens, in my opinion, and I mean, I'm pretty sure most Christians would agree, every bit of it is, the root of it is in sin somehow. Because that's when death started. It was, and I don't know if God intended for people to live forever whenever he created Adam and Eve, which I'm pretty sure he knew they would sin, because he knows everything. But I mean, if he didn't know everything, why would he already have an out, a solution, that kind of thing. So every bad thing that happens is because of sin. And I feel like these people were sinning for so long that their territory was taken, their homes, their livelihoods, everything was taken. But then they went back to God and they started regaining things. Their enemies were not messing with them like they were, They were, it says that there was peace between Israel and the Amorites. So there was peaceful times. Now, that doesn't mean there's always going to be peaceful times. But chapter 7 it's saying they were on the road to recovery. They were on their way to where they needed to be. And I didn't even look at any of my notes for chapter 7. I guess I'll just read my notes, and if they make sense, they make sense. If they don't, I'm sorry. The people, what did I say? I didn't even write that right. I need to teach myself regular hand too, not just shorthand. I meant there, not were. The people there decided to put away their false god. Their false gods, that we already established that. When the people turn from their idols, God helped them. God helps us even during our idol worship, but we aren't focused on it, so we don't see it. See, and I put that down because I know that there were times when I was out in the world, when I was away from God, when I was doing things I shouldn't, that great things happened. And now I can look back and I know that was a God thing. That was God protecting me. That was God doing something for me, even though I was not where I should have been. And I believe that God sent Samuel. He had Hannah to pray, and Samuel was born because God still loved his people, and he wanted what was good for them, and he wanted someone that was going to guide them in the proper ways. And he knew Eli's children weren't going to do it. Now, I could be wrong, but that's just the way it sounds to me. So God was taking care of the people even during their idol worship. We have to be devoted to God only to have the full benefit of what he gives us. If we're not devoted to God, we're not going to have everything that he has planned for us or everything we could have. Because we're not going to hear that still small voice. We're not going to see the direction that he wants us to go in because we're not paying attention to him. It's just like whenever you've got your GPS going and the little lady is telling you turn left in 1/4 mile or whatever, and you just keep going because you didn't really listen to her. Maybe you had your music too loud in the car. Maybe you just had her volume down. You had the GPS on, but you didn't hear her because everything else around you was too loud. And then I have here, we have to go back to where God wants us to see his work in full. The people were content with Samuel as a judge for a while. So we know that. And now we're going into chapter 8 where things change yet again. Because the people were getting discontent. I'm drinking coffee again. This is the second time today. I don't know what's up with that. Coffee does nothing for me. The caffeine doesn't. I could drink decaffeinated. It'd be fine. I just like the taste. But, yeah, I don't get a pick-me-up from that. It just tastes good. Anyway, chapter 8. Now it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his sons judges over Israel. The name of the firstborn was Joel, and the name of the second was Abijah. I may be saying that wrong, which I think J in... does it in Hebrew have the H sound? I could be wrong. Anyways, we're going to call him Abijah because that's it's the way it looks. They were judges in Beersheba, but his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain, took bribes, and perverted justice. So they were not maybe as bad as Eli's kids, but they were like taking bribes. They weren't being good. It's like the judges you hear about, the bent judges, the crooked, ones that are, if you got enough money, you can get away with it kind of thing. Well, they were doing that kind of thing. They were taking bribes and they were perverting justice, and things were not the way God intended. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, "Look, you are old and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations." So the elders came and they said, "We want a king like everybody else has." Thing is, Israel had a government the way God had it set up, which was perfect. Because if God set something up, it's going to work if you listen. If you check the correct way to say name on Blue Letter Bible. Ooh, I didn't even know that they did that. I know that sometimes I go on Google, and see how you say a word. But I didn't think about Blue Letter Bible, and I use Blue Letter Bible. I didn't know they had that. I don't know everything about the website though. But anyway, that's a good tip. Yeah, Carol's got all kind of tips. But anyways, the people wanted the government set up the way that, and later they were warned about wanting a king too. Later, that is. Oh yeah, they're fixing to be warned in just a minute. Blue Letter Bible, I think, has an app and it's a website, but I'm not positive if it has an app, but I think so. But anyways, they wanted the government just like the other places, the other nations had. And we know the other nations, yeah, they might have been okay, but there was a lot of drama too that was going on. And if you think about it, like our government here in the US, and I know not everybody that watches my channel is in the US, but our government is different than even Canada. And then Canada is different than the UK. And every nation, they have different governments set up for reasons. Well, God had the government of the Israelites set up a certain way for a reason. But they weren't happy because people just can't be happy. They just can't. They got to be miserable. They don't want anybody else to be happy. They don't want to live in their life of happiness and contentment. They just want to have things like everybody else. So that's not true for everybody, but I'm just saying.